Hello everyone, Staci Wallace here with another edition of The Power Source, and today we're talking parenting, how to raise successful children. Now on today's show, we're going to actually cover 4 very important ingredients that you must ensure that your children have in order to be successful in today's generation. What a great topic for us to be covering today, the topic of parenting. Now, a lot of folks are constantly asking Larry and I, how do you do it? How do you have kids that are so passionate about God, passionate about school, passionate about owning their own businesses? And one thing I want to make real clear at the front of this video, we are not a perfect family. But I do have to say that we've come up with some pretty amazing things to have teenagers at the age that they're at right now who are absolutely dedicated to making life better for others. They've got great grades, they've got great businesses, they're passionate about hanging out with the right people, their core values are in place, they've got character. We're very blessed that our kids aren't hanging out and doing things that a lot of other kids are doing. So that's why parents ask us, how are you guys doing that? Well, I'd like to tell you it's some secret sauce that we've got, but today I am going to share with you 4 very important things that we've done ever since they were babies that I believe have made the difference. Now, today we're talking about how to raise successful children. I think it's important, first off, let's define the word success. The word success can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. A lot of people think that success means having a big house or cars or having a lot of money. A lot of people think success means being able to buy what you want when you want. But I'm going to redefine success because we've been with money and we know what it is to be completely without money. We've been rich according to standards, and we also know what it feels like to have to shuffle underneath cushions in order to find pennies in order to keep our lights on. So we've been with and we've been without, but we've been blessed that we've been successful in both places. What is success? We've been successful even though we didn't have 2 pennies to rub together. We had peace, we had joy, our children were well grounded, we were able to spend time with them, we had health, vitality. We've been wealthy, and I have to say that with wealth comes great responsibility. A lot of times the more wealthy you become, the less you think you need God, and you stop pressing in to the things of God. You rest on your laurels. Well, today I'm going to show you that no matter who you are, what your economic background is, what color you are, or what your standing is or rank is in life, success is yours right now. Now, my definition of success is real simple. It's just doing what the manufacturer created you to do and doing it well. So let's just take, for example, this cell phone. What is the success of this cell phone? The success of this cell phone depends upon whether or not it is used according to how the manufacturer, Apple, created it to be used. Now, if I used it as a paperweight, it would not be successful in its original intent. Instead, when I use it to make phone calls or look things up, or maybe I use it for a GPS system, it's being successful because it's operating in its original purpose or intent. Well, the same thing is for you and I as human beings, and even for our kids. What is the original intent of the manufacturer of our lives? God created each of us. Now, you guys can read Mission Possible, my book and Bible study program, if you want to learn more about purpose, or you can go watch the YouTube video, five minutes to know your purpose in 5 minutes or less. But purpose is basically simple. That it's this: doing what the manufacturer created you to do and doing it well. So what were you created to do? God created humankind, you, me, your children, to reflect Him in the world. Well, if they're at school, they're fulfilling their God-given purpose no matter what their grades are, no matter what class they're in, no matter whether they play sports or not. They're fulfilling their purpose if they can shine in that circumstance. If they can let their light so shine before men that they can see their good works and glorify God, they are fulfilling their purpose. If you're a successful businessman or businesswoman or a tycoon or entrepreneur, you can be wealthy, have money, and not successful. Because you can have money and be completely egotistical and only driven for materialistic possessions and not be shining your light of love, joy, peace, patience. You can be in a wheelchair. You can be have muscular dystrophy. You can be somebody who doesn't have arms or legs and fulfill your full purpose. Why? Your purpose is to reflect God wherever you're at. You're in that wheelchair, then shine, baby, shine. There are times where I've seen guys like Nick Vujicic that light up a room despite the fact he has no arms or legs. He's fulfilling his purpose because he's shining in every circumstance or situation. You can be incarcerated today and wonder, wow, can I fulfill my purpose here? Yes, you can, because believe it or not, we need light to shine in the prison systems across the United States and the world. So now that we understand what is success, success is being God's light to the world around you, no matter how much money you got, no matter what your job is, no matter who you are or where you came from, you can be successful. Now, how do we ensure, because there's a lot of unsuccessful PhDs and pedigreed, great, brilliant minds who don't operate in their God. They're not shining. They're selfish. They're egotistical. How do you ensure that your children be successful in today's world? Well, there are 4 things we're going to cover. First, let's take a look at a scripture. Psalms 127:3, I think, is the best scripture of all because it says, children are a heritage of the Lord. In other words, they're a reward. And it goes on to say they're arrows in the hands of mighty warriors. And you're probably wondering why I was holding this arrow. We're going to talk about, so children are a heritage of the Lord. They're a gift. In fact, that scripture says, blessed is the man whose quiver is full. Man means man or woman, right? So this last week, we went to the NCFCA speech and debate tournament. Now, if you know anything about speech and debate, it's a highly competitive program where hundreds and hundreds of kids from all over come, and this was the first tournament of the year. Now, there's a lot of homeschool families that are a part of this organization. Now, if you know anything about homeschool families, you know that a lot of homeschool families believe in having a quiver full of children. That means 6, 7, 8. In fact, I met one beautiful lady this week, has 10 children. I looked at her and said, are you kidding me? All from your body? And she said, 1 at a time. So when you have a quiver full, believe it or not, it is a security system for your future. According to that scripture, your quiver is full because in your old age, those children, if raised to be successful, they will then turn when you are old, and not only will they protect you, but they will also provide for you in your old age. So it's actually a protection system. It's a self-preservation system, according to scripture, that you have kids. You have lots of kids. Now, we have 2 kids. After doing a little bit more studying, I'm thinking, man, we shouldn't have stopped at 2. Maybe we might adopt someday. But the point is your heritage, the blessing of children, is a heritage of the Lord. Now, the rest of that scripture says, arrows in the hands of warriors, mighty warriors. Who's the warrior? You're the warrior. Who are your children? They're your arrows. So we're going to look at 4 very important ingredients of every arrow, and those same ingredients are the ingredients your children need in order to be successful today. Number 1 is the shaft. Now, the shaft is basically it's the foundation or the spine of the arrow. What does that mean for us? Well, that's your children's foundation, their core values, what you teach them. Everything else on the arrow attaches to the shaft. Now, the shaft is very important because if you have a weak shaft, under the tension of the bow, it will break, especially if you are going after an enemy. Now, if you're doing target shooting and things like that, it's not as important that it be a very strong shaft, although they are pretty strong. This one's metal. But it is very important, especially the distance that you want to fly, accuracy. The shaft makes a difference. Now, what does that mean for your children? How you raise your children is very important, what you teach them. Now, I want to invite you, if you don't follow us on Facebook, then you probably haven't seen, but we're doing something unique this month, is we're giving you a sneak peek into our home. We, for a long time, every morning, basically at 7:30 in the morning, we sit at the kitchen table with our children and we talk. We spend at least an hour. We talk about real life issues. We talk about principles that we believe are important. Larry and I are 48 years old, so it's important. Well, I'm 48, he's 47. Very important for them to know. We cover books like Good to Great, John Maxwell books. We just finished The Names of God. Now we're studying 7 Pillars of Health. We go through various books and then we break it down and we ask the kids, what did you get out of that chapter? We talk about it to make sure that they're getting it. Make sure that it's really sinking into their spirit. Why? Because we're creating their spine. We're creating their shaft. We're helping to establish nutritional values, faith values, family values. This week we're talking a lot about relationships and what marriage is about, and not just what marriage is about, but what it's like to marry somebody and then have to figure, like right now we're talking about sleep. When we talk about pillars of health, how important it is to choose wisely who you marry. If you don't want to sleep with somebody who snores, if you don't want to sleep with somebody who has sleep issues or who doesn't value sleep, then you're probably going to want to make that a part of your decision-making system. All of these things are very important for the core values or the shaft of your arrow's lives. Now, there's a scripture actually that talks about this in Proverbs 22 verse 6. And it basically is, train up a child in the way they should go so that when they're old, they'll not depart from it. Now, there's another scripture here that I want to read. Obviously, that's why we spend so much time. And I invite you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. You can watch our Facebook Live. We're giving you a sneak at the table so you can see how we do it with our kids. I know it didn't happen quickly for us. The first 6 months was chaotic trying to get them to do this a couple years ago because they're teenagers, right? They don't want to just sit there. They don't want to get up early. After about 6 months, before the 6 months, it was like, I'm tired, my throat hurts, can I sleep in? But we knew that what seemed difficult in the beginning, if we as parents would hold standard, eventually it would become a modality, and then it would become a ritual, and then it would become an expectation. Now it's their expectation. They value it so much. They talk about who's going to get the table, who's going to get the bench when mom and dad pass away. I mean, it's become something they're very, very proud of, the time that they get with their mom and dad. You know, a lot of kids don't get an hour a day, let alone the time of dinners and the core value times together. So they're seeing now, when they look around them at other kids, they're like, wow, this is really special. If you can begin to create that in your family's life, you'll begin to see that these scriptures train up a child in the way they should go. That's not just, hey, I hope you do great and have fun at in Sunday school today. It's not your pastor's job. It's not your Sunday school teacher's job. It's not their teachers at school's job. It's not your friend's job to train them in the ways of the Lord, to train them scriptural principles. It's your job. So number one, the shaft is very important. Now, I want to cover something here for you real quick, because in Deuteronomy, now what I believe is, sorry, somebody's trying to call me and they're messing with my deal here. Okay, in Deuteronomy, it actually gives you the prescription for how to raise your children and why it's so important. I want to read this to you. It's going to take a second. But listen to this, because this is like a life security system. Many of you pay monthly to have security on your home. I'm going to show you what it means to have security around your children's life and how to have security in your life all the way to your old age. This is Deuteronomy 6. I'm going to go ahead and start at verse 1, even though verse 4 is what I want to anchor on. This is the commandment, rules, regulations that God, your God, has commanded me to teach you and to live out in the land you are about to cross into and possess. Now understand, this is when there's been a promise that you're getting ready to be blessed. You're getting ready to be taken into a land of milk and honey. Now I want you guys to be looking at this year with expectation of good things that are going to, sudden abundant blessings overtaking you. Well, what are you supposed to do when you get there? Or what are you supposed to do as you prepare for that blessed life? This is so that you will live and your family will live in deep reverence to God all life long, observing all of his rules and regulations that I'm commanding you today. Both you and your children and your grandchildren will then live good, long lives. Listen obediently. Do what you're told so that you'll have a good life, a life of abundance, a life of bounty, just as God promised, a land abounding in milk and honey. Attention, Israel. God, our God, is the one and only God. Love your God with all your heart. Love him with all that's in you. Love him with everything you've got. Write these commandments. Now, here's where it gets good. Write these commandments that I've given you today on your heart, and then get them inside of you so that you can get them inside of your children. Talk about them wherever you are, sitting at home or walking in the street. Talk about them from the time you get up in the morning to when you fall into bed at night. Tie them around your hands, your foreheads, reminders. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your home and on the city gates. Why is this important? Because that's how you're going to get them into your kids. That's how you're going to get core values. We live in a crazy society. The shaft of this society is broken. The character, the foundations, the things that have been, prayer being taken out of schools, not being able to post the 10 commandments. Why? Because the enemy's goal is to break the shaft. If you break the shaft, there is no weapon against his arsenal. That's why Larry and I are so passionate about what we do. Of all the companies we've birthed, of all the networks into the hundreds of thousands, of all the beautiful blessings that we have, nothing is more important than creating a great shaft and creating our children to be great arrows that we can shoot into the marketplace so they can let their light shine and fulfill their purpose. Now, after the shaft, the number 2 thing is the fletching. Now, you may wonder, what is fletching? Let's just call it feathers, right? The feathers are very important, and they represent, number 1, obviously the shaft represents foundations. Number 2, the fletchings represent direction. Believe it or not, what these feathers, these ones are actually made of plastic, but let's say they were made of feathers. The reason why they are attached to the shaft is to keep that arrow going in a straight direction. Direction is very important. I also like to think of it as the personality of the arrow. Your children are going to have different personalities. You know, Larry and I are both athletes, and neither of our kids want to do anything with sports, right? They have personalities that are more bent towards arts and entertainment. Peyton, of course, is an entrepreneur. So it's our responsibility to make sure that the fletching, the direction that they take those talents is in the right direction. We make sure that we do that by developing their character, by developing their integrity, by speaking into their lives and ensuring that what matters most to God matters most to them. And they found themselves often ostracized. They've found themselves on the outside of conversations. They found themselves sometimes not totally relating to, you know, the talk about drugs or alcohol. They've been invited to participate in things that are outside of their value system. But because we created a solid shaft, they are not tempted by those things. I asked them the other day, I said, are you guys tempted in any way? And they said, no, because where that's going to lead them is not in the place that we want to go. Now, I pray, you know, they're 16 and 17 years old. I pray that holds out for the rest of their life. But what I know is the covenant of God is that we keep teaching these things to them. We can ensure that when they're old, they'll not depart from it. Now, number 3 is the arrowhead. Now, the arrowhead is very important because the arrowhead talks about, every arrowhead is different. Arrowheads have different purposes in them. Some arrowheads were intended just for, like this one, is just target practice, right? It's a cheap little arrow. Other arrowheads, even back in the medieval times, they were intended to kill or completely thrash the enemy target, which would probably have been a person. Of course, there's animal arrows as well. The most important thing about the arrowhead, though, is it is what drives the passion. It's the point, it's the tip, it's what drives and pierces the darkness. Now, there are a lot of talented kids out there, great at football, great with their grades, but they're just not passionate about the things of God. They're passionate about winning. They're passionate about trophies. They're passionate about being popular, but they're just not pointed towards the things of God. I know a lot of people who have PhDs or high-level pedigrees from MIT or Harvard or Yale living literally under a bridge. Why? Because their passion has died. The end of their tip is dull. They're not attached to a firm foundation. If you miss any one of these arrows, parts of the arrow, you're not going to have successful children. Now, the final thing is, of course, the knock. And the knock is real important because the knock is this little divot here that's at the end, and it's actually what holds the arrow in place so that when it's time for that arrow to be shot out, it's shot out with precision. Maybe you're a parent and you didn't really raise your kids like this, and so they got 16, 17 years old and they were ready to be out of your house. They wanted to get out. They wanted to have their independence. They wanted to prove themselves strong because there wasn't a solid knock in place. Knock is timing. Teaching timing to your children, letting them know that there's going to be a day when God speaks to us as mom and dad and says, it's time. It's time for you to go. And that they be patient, that they be submitted. The scripture says, honor your mother and father so that your days may be whole. Here's the thing about the knock. You will not hold your kids in place if you hold a double standard. If you are not leading by example, children do not want to be told what to do. But if you show them how to do it, it's a totally different thing. If you're telling your children, I don't want you drinking and smoking, I don't want you sleeping around, and yet nighttime entertainment, you're watching TV shows of drinking, smoking, people sleeping around, you have a double standard. You've got to say, is that TV show, the addiction I have for that show, really worth the values I'm compromising or confusing inside of my home? You've got to look at yourself and say, I might be telling them not to lie. I'm telling my kids, don't lie, don't cheat, don't tell people untruths. And yet at the same time, you're teaching them that there's a Santa Claus. Like, really? How do you mix that up? There's these little foxes that spoil the vine. As parents, you got to look in the mirror and say, and I know that bah humbug, right? But there's not a Santa Claus. There's a God who provides for our family every year. There's a mom and dad who've worked all year long to pay for those presents. Not some red and white dressed guy that falls through a chimney that creates confusion for kids that today, things like Christmas and Easter and the tooth fairy, it creates confusion. And I know you're thinking, oh, it's no big deal. Well, neither is watching shows about adultery and pornography and lying and cheating. That's how we got to this generation. But when you as a parent, you set a standard of excellence and you say that we are going to hold strong to the foundation, which is the shaft, to the fletching, which is the direction of God, that's the arrows. The arrowhead, we're going to stay passionate about the things God is passionate about. And finally, the knock. We're going to wait to hear God's voice, know His voice, so that we walk in God's timing. I know that you're probably thinking, wow, that is a lot. And maybe you're not there today. Here's the great thing. Even if you didn't do this with your kids, you can start now. When you turn towards God, He begins to turn His favor towards you. Maybe you didn't teach your kids that. Maybe they're off and running far from God. The good thing is when you turn to God, God begins to go take and make Romans 8:28. All things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to His purpose. He can turn around what you messed up because He's that kind of God. He's the author. He's the manufacturer of your children. He knows exactly what they need in order to make it home. I pray for you today that this has blessed you and that you understand to be successful is going to require a team effort, and you are that team leader. You're the warrior, and those arrows are your children or your grandchildren. You can make a difference in their development. I encourage you to go over to staciwallace.com. If you don't know what it means to know your purpose, take the Mission Possible Unleashing Your Full Potential training. It's available there on the website. Of course, subscribe, share this video. I'm sure you know some parents who need to hear this today, who need to be encouraged that maybe they didn't do things exactly right, but they can start today by being the example, having good foundations, having clear direction, clear timing. When you do that in your life, you begin to make a difference in the world around you. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. at the table, and you can see that on my Facebook channel, or you can also see it on my YouTube channel. God bless everyone. Remember, now is the time, this is the place, and you are the one that's going to help us make life better for many.